So King Charles is supposedly stuck in the middle of a silent war between Queen Camilla and Kate Middleton. And honestly, the most interesting part isn't even the alleged jealousy. It's the timeline of how we got here and why the whole narrative feels like it's been stitched together from old tabloid headlines and wishful thinking. Like if you actually look at what's being reported versus what's been happening in reality, the contradictions start stacking up almost immediately. We're being told that Camilla is threatened, that Charles is having secret regrets about Princess Diana, and that Kate is somehow outmaneuvering the Queen Consort without even trying. But when you zoom out and look at the actual dynamics of this family over the past few years, a lot of this story relies on you not remembering what happened 6 months ago. So, the first thing that jumps out is this idea that Kate's popularity has only recently become a problem for Camilla. The narrative being pushed is that since becoming Princess of Wales in September 2022, Kate has ascended to this new level of public adoration that's making Camilla feel insecure. But here's where that falls apart. Kate has been the most popular royal after the late Queen for basically a decade. This isn't new. The polls haven't suddenly shifted. Kate's approval ratings have been consistently high since roughly 2017, when she really came into her own with the mental health initiatives and started doing more solo engagements. So the idea that Camilla just noticed this in the last year or two doesn't really track. If there was going to be a jealousy crisis, it would have happened years ago, not now when Camilla has actually achieved the thing she spent decades waiting for. She's the queen, she's got the title, she's got the coronation, she's got the public acknowledgement from Charles. That's not typically when someone spirals into insecurity about their daughter-in-law. Also, can we talk about how this whole story conveniently ignores the fact that Camilla and Kate have been in each other's lives for over a decade now? Kate married William in 2011. Camilla married Charles in 2005. That's 18 years of family holidays, joint appearances, and shared royal events. If there was some deep-seated resentment brewing, we would have seen actual evidence of it by now, beyond just body language analysis from people who've never met either woman. The reports say Kate is reserved around Camilla and lacks warmth, okay? But Kate is reserved around almost everyone in public. That's kind of her thing. She's poised, she's polished. She doesn't do big emotional displays at royal engagements. That's not tension, that's just how she operates. She was the same way with the late Queen, and nobody was writing fan fiction about a feud there. What's actually happening here, if you strip away all the dramatic framing, is that the monarchy is going through a natural transition phase, and certain media outlets are desperate to turn it into a catfight. Charles is in his mid-70s. William and Kate are in their early 40s. The institution is gradually shifting toward the next generation because that's literally how monarchy works. Camilla knows this. She's not stupid. She spent decades navigating one of the most complicated public relationships in modern history. She understands how the long game works better than almost anyone. The idea that she's suddenly panicking because Kate is getting more attention feels like it was written by someone who doesn't understand that Camilla's entire strategy has always been about patience. But let's talk about the Diana element, because that's where this story really shows its hand. The narrative being pushed is that Charles is privately regretting how he treated Diana, that he sees her qualities in Kate, and that this is somehow making him question his relationship with Camilla. I need you to really think about whether that makes sense for a man who is now in his 70s, who's been married to Camilla for almost 20 years, who fought through decades of public backlash to be with her, and who just made her queen. Like, that's not a man who's sitting around wondering if he made the wrong choice. That's a man who made his choice very clearly and very publicly, and is stuck with it through literally everything. The idea that he's now having secret moments of solitude where he whispers to himself about Diana feels less like insider information and more like projection from people who never forgave him for the divorce. The Diana comparisons to Kate are also worth examining because they're doing a lot of heavy lifting in this story. Yes, both women are stylish, warm in public, and good with children, but the Diana parallels have been applied to Kate since her engagement was announced in 2010. This isn't some new observation that's suddenly making Charles uncomfortable. He's been watching his daughter-in-law get compared to his late ex-wife for 14 years. If that was going to trigger some emotional crisis, it would have happened long before now. The more likely truth is that Charles has made peace with Diana's legacy as much as anyone can, and he sees Kate as her own person rather than some ghostly reminder of his past mistakes. What I find genuinely interesting, though, is how this story frames Camilla's supposed strategy for maintaining relevance. It suggests she might increase her public appearances, align herself with significant causes, or deepen her relationship with Charles. But those are just the job. That's what being queen consort is. She's supposed to do those things regardless of whether she feels threatened by Kate. Framing normal royal duties as a desperate attempt to stay relevant is a classic tabloid move. It takes something that would be happening anyway, and adds sinister motivation to make it seem dramatic. Camilla has been patron or president of over 90 charities for years. She's been doing domestic abuse advocacy work since long before she was queen. If she continues doing that work now, it's not because she's panicking about Kate's popularity. It's because that's literally her role. The report also mentions that Charles is carefully orchestrating joint appearances to make both women look united, and that he's giving Kate more prominent engagements to solidify her as a future queen. Again, this is just succession planning. William and Kate taking on more responsibility isn't a move against Camilla. It's the entire point of having a hereditary monarchy. Charles is 75 years old. He's not going to be doing this forever. The shift toward the younger generation was always going to happen, and it was always going to accelerate after the late Queen's death. Camilla knows this better than anyone because she watched the same thing happen with the Queen Mother, with Princess Margaret, with all the senior royals who gradually stepped back as the next generation came up. The part that actually made me pause, though, was the suggestion that Camilla's relationship with William might be strained. That's been rumored for years, and there might actually be something there. Not necessarily jealousy, but just the complicated dynamics of a blended family where the children's mother died in a traumatic way that was heavily tied to their father's relationship with their stepmother. William was 15 when Diana died. He had to watch his father's mistress slowly get rebranded as his father's partner, then his father's wife, then his stepmother, then the Duchess of Cornwall, and now the Queen. That's a lot of emotional processing for anyone, and William has always been more private about his feelings than Harry. So if there is some coolness between William and Camilla, that would make sense on a human level without needing to invent a jealousy plot involving Kate. But here's the thing. Even if there is some tension between William and Camilla, that doesn't automatically mean there's tension between Kate and Camilla. Kate's relationship with Camilla is mediated through William's relationship with Camilla, which is mediated through Charles's relationship with both of them, which is mediated through decades of complicated family history. Trying to isolate it down to Camilla as jealous of Kate's popularity is such a reductive way to look at a family dynamic that has more layers than a wedding cake. The polling data that keeps getting cited is also worth examining. Yes, Kate's approval ratings are high. They've been high, but Camilla's approval ratings have actually improved significantly since she became queen consort. When she married Charles in 2005, she had approval ratings in the low 30s. By the time of the coronation in 2023, she was polling in the high 40s to low 50s depending on the poll. That's still lower than Kate, but the trajectory is upward, not downward. If anything, becoming queen has helped her public image, not hurt it. So the idea that she's watching Kate's popularity with growing resentment doesn't match the data. Her own numbers are improving, not declining. What I think is actually happening is simpler and less dramatic. The monarchy is in a transition period. Charles's reign is widely expected to be shorter than his mother's, was simply because of his age. William and Kate are the future, and everyone knows it, including Camilla. The media needs stories to fill the gap between major royal events. And two women who work together professionally and have a cordial but not especially warm relationship doesn't sell papers or generate clicks. So we get this narrative instead: the jealous older woman, the effortlessly beloved younger woman, the man caught between them, the ghost of the first wife haunting everyone. It's a compelling story. It's just probably not true. The Diana regret angle is the most emotionally manipulative part of all of this because it taps into something that a lot of people still feel: that Diana was wronged, that she deserved better, that Charles must secretly know he made a mistake. And maybe he does have regrets about how things played out. Most divorced people do. But there's a difference between wishing you'd handled the situation better and wishing you'd chosen a different person entirely. And the evidence of Charles's actual behavior over the past 3 decades suggests he chose exactly who he wanted to be with. He waited years to marry Camilla. He weathered scandal after scandal. He made her queen, despite knowing it would be controversial. Those are not the actions of a man who secretly wishes he'd stayed with someone else. The story also claims that Charles is having private moments of solitude where he reflects on these regrets, as if 75-year-old kings have a lot of unscheduled alone time to stare out windows and ponder their romantic past. Charles's schedule is packed. He's running a monarchy, managing a family, dealing with health issues, and trying to modernize an ancient institution while keeping it stable. The idea that he's carving out time to have emotional reckonings about his first marriage feels like it was written by someone who's watched too many period dramas. What's actually revealing about this whole narrative isn't what it says about Camilla or Kate or Charles. It's what it says about how we still process Diana's death nearly 3 decades later. Diana remains the emotional center of so much royal coverage because she was genuinely beloved in a way that transcended the institution. People projected onto her. They saw themselves in her struggles. They mourned her as if they knew her. And because that grief never fully resolved, this is persistent desire to see her vindicated somehow. To see Charles finally admit he was wrong. To see Camilla finally face consequences, to see Diana's legacy triumph through Kate. The story delivers all of that wish fulfillment in one neat package. Charles is regretful, Camilla is insecure, Kate is Diana's true heir. Everyone gets the emotional resolution they've been waiting for. But real life doesn't work like that. Real families are messier and more boring. Charles probably doesn't spend his evenings thinking about Diana. Camilla probably isn't losing sleep over Kate's poll numbers. Kate probably isn't trying to outmaneuver anyone. They're all just doing their jobs, which happen to be some of the most scrutinized jobs in the world. While the media constructs narratives around them that have very little to do with reality, the part that almost made me laugh was the suggestion that Charles might be forced to make a choice between supporting Camilla or supporting Kate, as if this is a custody battle and not a family of adults who all understand how the institution works. Charles isn't going to wake up one day and announce that he's siding with Kate over his wife. That's not how any of this functions. The monarchy doesn't work through dramatic confrontations. It works through gradual shifts, quiet adjustments, and the slow passage of time. William and Kate will eventually be king and queen. Camilla will eventually be the Dagger Queen or whatever title she takes. Everyone involved knows this. The drama is entirely manufactured. So where does that leave us? With a story that's compelling to read, but falls apart the moment you apply basic logic or look at the actual timeline of events. Camilla has been in the public eye for decades. Kate has been popular for years. Charles has been consistent in his support of his wife. None of this is new. None of this is sudden, and none of it suggests some brewing confrontation that's about to reshape the monarchy. What it suggests is that royal coverage still relies on the same tropes it's been using since the 9S, and that the ghost of Diana is still the most reliable source of engagement that royal reporters have. Honestly, the fact that this story keeps getting recycled in different forms is maybe the most interesting thing about it. Every few months there's a new version of Camilla's jealous of Kate, and every time it's presented as if it's breaking news rather than a recurring narrative that never actually leads anywhere. The details change slightly. Sometimes it's about public appearances. Sometimes it's about Charles's attention. Sometimes it's about Diana's legacy. But the core story is always the same. And the fact that it keeps being told despite never being confirmed or leading to any actual conflict tells you more about the people telling it than the people it's about. If you want my actual read on the situation, I think Camilla and Kate have a perfectly functional relationship that's probably warmer than it was 10 years ago, but not especially close, which is normal for in-laws who work together. I think Charles is focused on his reign and his health, and isn't spending much time on emotional what-ifs about the eights. I think Kate is doing her job and isn't trying to compete with anyone. And I think the media will keep writing this story as long as people keep clicking on it, which will probably be forever, because we love a good triangle even when the triangle exists mostly in our collective imagination. But what do I know? I'm just looking at the same public information everyone else has and trying to figure out what actually makes sense. And what makes sense to me is that a 75-year-old king, his 77-year-old wife, and his 42-year-old daughter-in-law are not engaged in a silent jealousy war that Charles is going to have to resolve through some dramatic choice. What makes sense is that they're all doing their jobs, navigating a complicated family history and getting on with things while the rest of us project narratives onto their facial expressions at public events. The monarchy has survived actual wars and actual scandals. It's probably going to survive Kate being more popular than Camilla. And yet, despite all of that, I understand why the story persists. It's not really about Camilla or Kate or Charles at all. It's about us, the audience, and our need for narrative coherence in a family that has given us decades of genuine drama. We watched Charles and Diana's marriage implode in real time. We watched Camilla transform from the most hated woman in Britain to queen consort. We watched William marry a commoner who turned out to be better at being royal than almost anyone expected. That's an actual epic spanning multiple decades with heroes and villains and redemption arcs and tragic deaths. The real story is already dramatic enough, but it's also complicated and morally ambiguous and doesn't offer clean resolutions. So, the tabloids simplify it. They give us the version where the characters are archetypes, and the conflicts are straightforward, and the emotional beats land exactly where we want them to. That's why the Camilla versus Kate narrative works so well. It takes two women who represent different eras of the monarchy, the controversial second wife who waited decades for legitimacy, and the flawless future queen who makes it all look effortless and pits them against each other in a way that feels symbolically satisfying. Camilla represents the past, the scandal, the messiness of real human relationships. Kate represents the future, the stability, the idealized version of what royalty is supposed to look like. Of course we want to see them in conflict. Of course we want Kate to win. That's not journalism, that's mythology. And mythology has always been a part of the monarchy. The royal family exists as much in our collective imagination as it does in Buckingham Palace. They're not just people, they're symbols. And symbols get loaded with meaning whether they want it or not. So when I say that Camilla is jealous of Kate's story is probably not true. I'm talking about the literal interpersonal reality. But on a symbolic level, it's been true for years. The tension between the old guard and the new generation, between the complicated past and the hopeful future, between the woman who was once vilified and the woman who has been almost universally embraced. That tension is real. Even if it's not playing out in whispered arguments and frosty body language, maybe that's why we keep coming back to these stories. They're not really about what happened at some private family dinner or who said what at a palace reception. They're about the bigger questions that the monarchy always raises. Who deserves to be there? What makes someone worthy of public admiration? Can someone be redeemed? Can an institution outlive its scandals? Those are genuinely interesting questions. And the fact that we keep projecting them onto the relationships between specific individuals says more about our need to personify those questions than it does about the individuals themselves. So the next time you see a headline about Camilla feeling threatened by Kate or Charles regretting his choices, or some palace insider claiming there's a cold war brewing in the corridors of Windsor, just remember you're not reading a report, you're reading the latest chapter in a serialized drama that's been running since the 1980s with character arcs and recurring themes and a devoted audience that keeps coming back for more. The real royal family is probably a lot less interesting and a lot more functional than the version that lives in our heads, but functional families don't sell magazines. So the story continues, and we continue clicking, and somewhere in a palace office, someone probably rolls their eyes and gets on with their day.